Good morning, Smogon! Hope you guys are doing well today. I am here, my name is Munnith, for another one of these Gen 6 OU replay breakdowns. I'm here with RufflesPro. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, Ruffles here. ORS 2024 Invitational winner, proud starter on the Tigers for ORS under our fearless leader Zon. Here to enjoy this replay with you guys.
Yeah, so starting off, what are you thinking at this team preview here? You see a pretty standard stall team against what's a bit of a more unique sand team on the other side.
I think that's probably one of my favorite stall teams from the old gen stall teams. Venusaur plus Magnezone is really hard to wall for other stall teams, and it generally has really good characteristics. Santu's team is interesting. That probably looks like a Choice Banded T-Tar, which is a known stall killer, and a Keldeo and a Mew, which is very interesting. It doesn't look like it's lead Mew, so it could be Stall Breaker Mew. I don't like how Santu's team has like no grass resist whatsoever. That to me seems very dangerous.
Yeah, and in the generation of Superior, you don't want to be weak to grass. In some earlier generations, you can skimp on it, but not around here. The Venusaur looks really strong. Back in the old days, people used to run knockoff on Venusaur on this team because you could remove Assault Vest from Tornadus, leftovers off of Heatran, etc. But recently, people have been just running Growth over it instead because of the setup sweep potential and wall breaking that it provides.
It's an incredible stall breaker because both unaware mons are going to lose to it, and Growth can let you bypass some traditional checks like potentially Mew or like a Zapdos or something. It's very strong.
Alright, let's get started with this game. We see a lead of Mew against Clefable. The Mew starts off with Taunt as the Clefable clicks Knockoff and knocks off Leftovers.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, just wanted to pause real quick. That 22% does tell us this is a pretty bulky Mew. If it was like a lead set with no bulky Vs, then it would take a lot more damage.
Yeah, it's not Colbur, right? It's Leftovers, it's not Mental Herb. So pretty good tell that this is Stallbreaker Mew, which is going to be very interesting. Honestly, in modern ORAS, Stallbreaker Mew, like its ability to Stallbreak is entirely dependent on its fourth move. So some people run Knockoff, some people run Ice Beam, some people run Seismic Toss, some people run, Earth Power or Earthquake, or even other moves like Volt Switch or U-Turn. If it's something that cannot break Clefable, it's going to be very dire for Santu.
Yeah, something like a Seismic Toss filler on Mew would go absolutely insane in this matchup. Skarmory has 100%. To be afraid of Burn. It's going to do a lot to Clef. Chansey doesn't want to deal with Taunt plus Burn. Burn is just absolutely ravaging everything but Clef, and having something to wear it down is going to be great.
Oh yeah. And Seismic Toss is probably my favorite nowadays. Knockoff is really nice in general, especially versus Heatran stalls. Ice Beam is really good versus Gliscor Fats, but Seismic Toss is probably the most consistent. I'm excited to see what the fourth move is here.
Yeah, Knockoff does have some interesting applications on Mew because of being able to trade against like a Weavile in a situation where you don't want to let the Will-O-Wisp miss, knocking it off so the rest of your team can take hits from it a little bit better. Because if you did not know, max HP, max defense Mew does live a Choice Banded knockoff from Weavile.
Oh, absolutely.
Alright, let's see what happens. We see a Will-O-Wisp come out on the Clefable. That's going to cripple its attacking power, not do any damage because of Magic Guard. We see a knockoff come out, so that it does bring some of the issues that you mentioned earlier with knockoff. And we see a crit Moonblast do 35, keeping the Mew kind of low.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting now. Obviously, Will-O-Wisp alone is going to break the other 5 Pokemon, but not Clefable. So you can probably spam knockoff to get Clefable to 70%, but that's going to take a lot of soft boil and taunt PP, and then you still have to, if you get doubled on once in the game, you lose all your progress. It's going to be very difficult for Mew to do this alone. Luckily, there is a Choice Banded T-Tar. If the Mega Lopunny is adamant, that's huge. The Keldeo set could also maybe help a little bit. Maybe Spec Skullburn, maybe a Swords Dance Excadrill. There's a lot of still routes he can go, but Mew cannot 1v6 this.
One interesting thing to note about this matchup is, like, if that is an Adamant Lopunny like you mentioned, you really do want Stealth Rock up for Skarmory, but it does look like the Stealth Rock setter is a Landorus, which is not going to be setting consistently on Skarmory that often.
And that is actually a very good point. In ORAS, I always say this, the weakest point is always the removal. Skarmory is not a great removal, honestly, solo. There's a ton of Pokemon that can get on it, it gets rocks on it consistently. Even Excadrill probably gets rocks on it in the long term just because you have more Stealth Rocks PP. It's very unreliable in the long term game plan, but luckily for Gary, Landorus is one of the few Pokemon that cannot get it on Skarmory. And Skarmory can probably, even though it has lower defog PP, it can still beat it just because Landorus doesn't have any recovery.
Yeah, exactly. And Landorus is like a little bit weaker to Stealth Rock than Excadrill is. It's going to be taking like 12.5 on those switches. So switching into a Stealth Rock to get it back up against Skarmory, you're going to take like net chip damage.
Exactly.
Alright. We do see that we're going to see a soft boiled from the Mew here pretty much every time as Garay switches into Magnezone. We'll see Santu pivot out to Excadrill there. That's an interesting note. Obviously, Mew would live a Scarf Thunderbolt from Magnezone pretty easily, but that was a scout for a status move, like a Toxic or a Thunder Wave, as Mew taking a Toxic would pretty much be an instant game over for Santu, so he has to respect that.
Yeah, it's very common to run 4th move Toxic or T-Wave on this Magnezone. I actually do like Scarf Magnezone install a lot. It's a very proactive way to beat some very common threats that stall faces like Rain Dance Manaphy, for example, or like a Serperior. I do actually prefer T-Bolt the most, ironically, just because for Rain Dance Manaphy, and like a Power Punch Mega Metagross or something. But yeah, you definitely want to scout the status move because that would be devastating if the Mew got statused.
Yeah, that's definitely true with Power Punch taking off on Metagross. You don't have to be as afraid switching directly into it with a Magnezone, since you can take a power-up punch a lot better than you can take like a Hammer Arm or an Earthquake and fire off that Thunderbolt.
Absolutely.
And with on the Manaphy angle, it is nice to have two different moves to use against it, because a lot of the time Manaphy can also run Substitute, like on that one Venusaur Weavile team. So having that option to consistently stay in and hit it without being forced to switch out is very nice.
Very good point, yeah.
Alright, we do see the Skarmory plus Mew double switch. That was a nice play by Santu, knowing that Garay is never going to sacrifice his Clefable to Excadrill and try to get some pressure on by doubling the Mew.
Yeah.
See another taunt as standard. Here's Garay tries getting a cheeky Stealth Rock up. An important thing to note in these like bulky versus bulky matchups is a lot of the time players will play into taunt on purpose in order to save PP. Like someone will click Stealth Rock on a taunt just so they use one less PP. That can come in handy later in games for sure. Landorus.
Yeah, I mean,
you go.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a very good point. And you can play here because it's honestly going to take a minute while we talk. And honestly, the Mew is not going to do anything. For sure. It's clearly not going to do anything.
Yeah. Interesting thing we do see is that Skarmory does get a spike up. So if he wants to remove Stealth Rock, when they get set up, there's a bit more of a cost for Garay than before. Sort of like an opportunity cost angle here, where you're not chipping that Keldeo T-Tar Mew with spikes every time they come in if you get rid of hazards.
100%. And like you said, the PP is going to matter a lot here. Both these plays are really, really good seasoned players. They're going to take that into consideration. We never know. This game could go to 500 plus turns.
We do see leftovers on the Landorus, which does help a little bit against the Skarmory. A Rocky Helmet sets just get absolutely demolished by Helmet Skarmory, because the damage you take from clicking U-turn on the switch is pretty much permanent.
Yeah. And he did allow Soft Boil and Clefable, so that's going to reset his progress. You know, that's a certain number of knockoffs and taunts and Soft Boils that were wasted for not. But rocks are up. That is definitely huge. But you can't let Skarmory in, and now you have rocks and spikes on your field.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think rocks plus spikes is catastrophic here or anything, but it definitely doesn't feel great. We see a hidden power on a soft-boiled here from Santu. Aggressive soft-boiled there, knowing that with the Stealth Rock and Spike up, if he goes into Excadrill on an HP fire, he is in for a tough time. The Clefable is down to about 70%, which is what we were talking about, is that target HP to be in range of like an Excadrill Iron Head, +1 Keldeo, those kinds of attacks that you want for your stronger Pokemon on this team.
Absolutely. And we see here, zone with spikes up is a lot of pressure. That pair really sucks.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough to switch out the Mew there with how low it's going to be after taking all these hazards. And Garay does smartly double switch into Venusaur, seeing that the Mew's paralyzed, and it's kind of his chance now. And even though that critical hit may not have seemed like a huge deal, it is pretty big, because keeping the Excadrill low is one of the most important things for Garay if he wants to win this game. Makes it less able to rapid spin away these hazards that are getting set up, makes it less able to pressure the Clefable, puts it in range of Magnezone HP Fire. Santu's definitely got to be kicking himself after taking that critical hit.
It's definitely most annoying because it heals up on Venusaur quite a bit. That looked like Adamant Excadrill, and Venusaur is by far and away the biggest threat. So it having more HP, like if it had 10% less HP here, you can go to T-Tower or something.
Yeah.
Would have been a little bit more pressure. Another really, really big thing is the speed EVs. So I'm really curious. He didn't pursue, so we didn't see. But Mega Venusaur tends to run 200 speed for Azumarill. Some people have been running 210 for Crawdon. On stall team, that's the minimum I go, 210 for Crawdon, because otherwise Crawdon can be very, very annoying for the stall team. Tyranitar, Choice Band Tyranitar, it varies a lot. Some people run enough for Skarmory, some people run enough for Heatran, enough for the 200 range for Venusaur, but very few go to, Crawdon range at 210 or max speed at 221.
Yeah, one thing about Tyranitar that is always a little bit annoying to use it is, like, as we see here, the Stone Edge misses. It is a bit of a prediction reliant Pokemon. Like, you have to be thinking about in positions like a Clefable plus Quagsire team. Like, if you click Crunch on the Clefable, you lose all your progress with Mew, whereas if you click Stone Edge on Quagsire, you just kind of thud into it and lose your momentum. So it's a very pick your spots kind of Pokemon. Like you said, a Pursuit there on Venusaur would have been nice, but if he clicked Pursuit on a switch to Clefable, he would have lost all his progress there. So that's probably why he used Stone Edge.
Absolutely. I do think a Crunch was a little bit better. I don't think you realistically go Clefable there. What's actually interesting is Quagsire, even with rocks up, if Leftovers is intact, the chances of it dying to 2 crunches without a defense drop or a crit is probably like 4% or under. So it's honestly a pretty safe switch in.
Yeah.
But what makes Crunch really good is that you get those defense drops pretty frequently.
We do see the Keldeo take out the Chansey here. There's going to be Leftovers Calm Mind probably. Venusaur's going to come in to threaten it out. Like you mentioned, that critical hit on Excadrill, giving it a bit of extra healing, is getting it some mileage here.
Absolutely.
And the Banded Tyranitar does come back in. He just eats the Giga Drain and goes for the Pursuit. Great play by Garay to realize that Santu was going to try and catch him switching out there and just staying in with the Venusaur.
Yeah, and the Venusaur, to my prediction, was actually faster. You probably 210, that's like the best edit of that team. Tyranitar seldom goes 210 or above 200 at most. Maybe it could have been a speed tie at 200 or 201. The Tyranitar clicking Pursuit is devastating, absolutely. And yeah, it's also the good Venusaur set that I really like. It's modest, but it's still heavily invested in defense, which is what you want, so you can like really feel like a drain tank type of Pokemon without even having the need to set up.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes people can go a bit overboard on the bulk on Venusaur and take away what makes it such a good Pokemon. Like, obviously steel types are going to be a concern for poison plus grass coverage, but with Excadrill being people's steel type of choice on so many teams, like the one Santu's using here, the Giga Drain to take out like the Excadrill, do a bunch of damage to everything, then Sludge Bomb to like nuke flying types like Zapdos and Tornadus with the big damage and the Sludge Bomb poison. When you start running a lot of defense on Venusaur, you get kind of diminishing returns, and the offensive like breaking power of the set starts to go by the wayside.
You gotta find the right balance. And what you mentioned is very interesting, right? You're probably gonna have a steel type and a flying type on every team. And the fact that both of these are grounded for Santu, and meaning they're not your grass resistance, Heatran, Ferrothorn, Tornadus, Zapdos at the very least maybe can help a little bit. They're not even, there's not even a single grass resist. Venusaur does it like, it will always just click Giga Drain. I think at some point probably going Mew and trading a burn would have been, in hindsight, his ideal play instead of trying to stall break so much. But yeah, at this point after paralysis, you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, once the spike got up and Magnezone was putting on all that pressure, he was kind of forced to click soft-boiled, because otherwise his Mew wouldn't have been able to come in with any real degree of health to get that burn on Venusaur in the first place. I feel like that para kind of sealed the game a little bit, unless Tyranitar went insane.
100%.
Yeah, and I feel like at this point, it's really tough to break through this Venusaur. Like, even though it's going to be like 30% or whatever once it switches out, you'll be more than healthy enough to do what you need to. I imagine we'll probably see Skarmory or Clefable come in here. Yeah, Clefable is going to be one of his better answers against Lopunny.
That does look like Adamant Lopunny, unless it's not fully defensive Clefable, which also happens often. Interestingly enough, it's very rare to see Choice Band Tyranitar do this little versus stall. Unfortunately, the fast, somewhat bulky Venusaur helped a lot, and obviously Quagsire or like a Gliscor are probably one of your favorite ways to tackle a Choice Band Tatar. We see here Hail Mary, Calm Mind. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, this is really your only play at this stage. You're getting as many Calm Minds as you can to minimize the impact of those Giga Drains from Venusaur, and just seeing if you can bust through the team. We do see the Scald come out at +3 because there is a Quagsire at the back, and we see a Haze clearing away the stat boost from the Keldeo.
Haze is what you always want to run on Quagsire. It's a good set.
Yeah, for situations exactly like that. It would have been nice to see a Taunt Keldeo there, but unfortunately did not have the sauce to finish out the game.
It's honestly, it's not as good as Substitute. Taunt is usually better for Toxapex generations, but it's also nothing on Gary's Scout begs for a Taunt, but it would have been hilarious for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few upsides to Taunt. It's one of the best moves in the game. Like, the impact of like scalding a Clef on the switch and taunting it for your Lopunny is like, the dynamic is a little bit different than that sub Calm Mind, which is more of like an all-in-win condition, whereas Taunt is like a wall breaker that keeps stuff low. So I think there's like some nuances there.
Yeah, Drillblack is interesting. It's, you do definitely want a flying move for Mega Pinsir or Mega Heracross without having the recoil. So it's an interesting edit I like running sometimes too.
I mean, as you saw there, if you look at the damage that did, it did 51% to a Keldeo. The lower base power Drill Peck just really hurts you against like even Pokemon that are weak to it, that are offensive. Like, it's not going to KO your Lopunnies, your Keldeos, things that you really should be KOing. Something like a Serperior is going to shrug off a Drill Peck. The higher base power Brave Bird is really worth it, in my opinion. I find it extremely difficult to justify Drill Peck pretty much all the time in ORAS.
I agree, even for like situations where you're trying to whittle down Excadrill or Landorus to win the Rocks War. But overall, looking at this replay, the paralysis and the Giga Drain crit were definitely lucky. In the long run, I don't think it mattered too much, just because Gary had such an incredible matchup. But it definitely gave Santu less time to, in terms of turns, less turns to outplay. So it definitely does feel bad. But
Yeah, I mean, if his Mew was healthy, it's possible he could have burned the Venusaur, but with it being knockoff instead of Seismic Toss, he would have had to play pretty much perfectly in order to pull out this game from that point.
yeah, and just last like comments on the team. Generally, I'm very involved in the Aurus community. A lot of people ask me, for like advice on teams. Generally, I say one, water resist is not a good idea, especially if it's not Saw where you have Chansey and Clefable or something like that. Especially, I feel like it's especially true on Sand, and the fact that Santu's only water resist is Keldeo is just a good heuristic. Like, if Gary brought a Rotom Wash or even his own Keldeo,
Or God
or
forbid a
even like
Volcanion.
yeah, or even a Volcanion, like a sub Volcanion even, or even a Scarf Volcanion, I don't know what Santu does realistically, honestly, to like win against that. And no, like you said, no grass resist versus like a superior dominating meta. I don't know, man.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand like the approach Santu was trying to go here. He was obviously trying to catch like a very specific type of team, like one of those like spike stack balances with like Fairthorn and Heatran and Clefable, like maybe that like Lopunny one that people run or the Alakazam one, and just absolutely decimate that team with Taunt Wisp Mew and T-Tar. But, he ended up getting a grass-type Pokemon, which is not what he wanted to see.
Absolutely. Santu's one of the best to do it. I'm sure he had great reasoning to do it. I would love to know what it was. Definitely, at least, glad to see a Stallbreaker Mew. That's kind of like a rare set nowadays. At least, he ventured. I respect him for that. And very nice try. But, Gary honestly played solidly and had a really, really, really good matchup.
All right. Thank you so much for doing this video with me.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for watching this wonderful battle. Hope you all have a great day. Remember to follow us on Twitch at SmogOnU, as well as subscribe to the channel for more uploads like this. Have a wonderful day.